This whole like topic of aligning teams together, I feel like is something that MarTech folks, marketing ops folks, and PMMs have a lot in common. Like we are very much both this like translator role within a company. We're like marketing adjacent, but we're not really marketing, right? I know that's kind of like your shtick a little bit here, but some of the folks in marketing ops went on this like big tirade last year about like is marketing ops marketing? And you guys are all like, is product marketing marketing? But it's a fair question because like product marketers translate and bridge between marketing and product teams. And similarly, MarTech folks translate between marketing and data teams and sometimes product teams also. So as this like translator role, I'm curious to ask you guys like, what's your best strategy to get everyone rowing in the same direction in your experience? Zach, I'll let you go first.
Yeah. Um, Eric said a point earlier. He said a phrase earlier, and I take beef with it. The word the word is delegate, because the reason why I struggle with that is that product marketers historically don't have any influence on metrics.
Hmm.
Like there's nothing like, and that it's a blessing and a curse, because we can be like, "Oh, product adoption, not our problem," but it makes it harder to get people on board. So like, and I take this from a frame of reference from when I was in sales. If I'm selling to someone, I can't delegate to a prospect, you go do this. I need to, a better way to, I think, to reframe it is that like, okay, like let me understand what is it that you're looking to achieve. So like let's get back to the example of like Phil, you brought up like, hey, marketing ops is working on this whole new revamp that might seem totally like astray from what the rest of the org's doing. If let's say in a situation that is like this is a big launch and we need marketing ops and like involvement into it, and they're like, oh, we're doing this big group, I'd stop and be like, okay, well, like tell me more about it, like,
Hmm.
well, because I might be wrong. I might be wrong in thinking that what we are doing is a priority, but maybe there's something that you guys are doing that is closer aligned to the business than what this launch. Like, help me better understand. And throughout that conversation, you can tell me a few things where I could take a step back and be like, hey, that's very helpful for me to know. Like one example is that it goes back to Gab, you mentioned it earlier. It's like, like shifting between different teams is that when I was my first year in product marketing, I got put onto this tier 2 launch. And a big component of this launch was this feature. It's a significant feature. Sellers were talking about it. They're telling their customers about it. The rest of the org was like, this feature's coming out. I was like, okay, this is great. This is going to be easy. I first meeting with the product manager. I'm like, hey, I just want to get aligned with you. Here's the PRD. Like, this is my understanding. Can you review and make sure we're aligned on it? He's like, yeah. He's like, this feature, this feature, this feature, unauthenticated scanning, that's not coming out. I was like, oh, um, that team and this team are saying it is coming up. And he was heated. He's like, oh, this is not even a big feature. Oh, I don't know why people are making us think about it. And I was just like, your team even said this was coming out, and you guys have made it a big thing. So, like, that's just an example where, like, here's like where different teams have different priorities. And like one example where product marketing can be helpful in bringing that influence and be like, okay, like you're saying it's not a big deal, but like, hey, let's look at the market data right now. Like, customers want this. Let's look at the number of opportunities in Salesforce that are tied to this one feature. Let's look at this dollar amount. So you're saying this is not a big deal, but look at how much this might influence this business here. Long story short, he wasn't with the business shortly after a conversation, but that's just an example of like alignment. Is that, see, I think my approach to learning from sales is just really understanding like what the objectives of different teams are, and just assume that like we might not know. Let's just assume we're dumb and be like,
Hmm.
okay, like I might be wrong, and what you're doing is right. Tell me more about this. And I
Hmm.
found that to be in a more effective way.
Zach said something interesting about like, yeah, we like influence, and I think it's important as you said that the it's important to understand the goal of each different department and how we can help them win like individually. So if you don't have a good relationship with sales, starting to help SDRs and BDRs with their messaging, with what they're trying to achieve, could be a good way to, you know, influence their relationship. But I think it's often a question of how do we position ourselves internally? So whether you're in MarTech, whether you're a PMM, there's always that question that I feel like there's a huge comparison with those startups either trying to create a new category or just sticking to one, right? If PMMs are marketers, if we position ourselves as marketers and we're trying to create influence with sales, does it benefit us more to not be considered marketers because of the silo with sales, or does it benefit us less of like taking that road and being in that category or a different one, like being more considered towards product, for example? And just asking those questions can ultimately influence your perception of you, of your role, and also influencing like the relationship. If I tell you, oh, I make sales like pretty, or I'm able to do whatever you want sales, please, 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 I'll do a deck with you on a Friday afternoon, then you're just opening yourself to doing a lot of that stuff that is ultimately moving you from your bottom line and the impact you can have. So just to get back to Zach's point, it's very good to knowing like what they're trying to achieve, but try to ask yourself, what's their current perception of my role? And am I sticking out in the right category for the current understanding of my peers?